I did
How
it.
are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Did you decide to wear cologne?
I did work alone, but only because I went. I, I did text Rachel and asked if I should wear cologne. I was joking, but I was like, I'll wear cologne.
Just a little
I
quick
don't know.
spritz.
Little spritz, little spritz.
Well, awesome. Thanks for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. Everyone's
I'm
welcome.
sure it's going to elevate the experience, I'm sure. So, thanks for everyone here joining us, and thanks for everyone who ends up watching this later. Just a quick recap. These are FreeFall Fridays, and basically these are times where I get to interview people in my life who inspire me and who have done something that I just feel is different, something that shows courage, something that inspires me to just kind of think outside the box of what life can look like and not just fall into the norms of what society tells us life needs to look like. So Cardozie is definitely one of those people. Erica is here. Erica is one of my roommates, and she can attest to this. Anytime I come from a conversation with you, Cardozie, if we've like had coffee or something like that, I'm like, Cardozie is my muse. Like, I just am always so inspired by you. So I'm glad that you're here to join us today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for that. I'll take it.
So I'm going to just open up. Well, actually, I'll give kind of the overview, and then you'll let you fill in the gaps. But basically, you started as a high school teacher. You've had some life-changing experience, and now you've moved on to creating your own business. And I'd like you to just kind of walk us through that journey.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, where do you start? Like, what point of the life-changing experiences do you start at? I
Talk
think,
to us about being a high school teacher.
Great. Yeah. So, I was a high school teacher in Brooklyn, New York, where I lived for a very long time. And I taught theater. I moved to New York to study theater, and then became very disillusioned by what I found to be like the way that institutional racism manifests in theater. Because theater for me growing up was very Black centric. I'm from Philadelphia. So in Philly, theater is, I feel like, at least in my mind, like we owned it. And then I moved to New York, and I was like, oh no, y'all don't own it. We let you in sometimes. I was like, peace out. And so I decided to take what I thought it should be to Brooklyn and in my teaching, where I taught mostly Black and brown students. And, that I was in a charter school, and they tend to promote very fast and very young in charter schools. So I, after about 8 years of beginning as a teacher, I resigned as assistant principal. And I think what I learned most of all in terms of what it meant to kind of like confront and undo systems is that the kids weren't the problem, like the adults were the problem.
Right.
And like the people who are charged and responsible to design spaces and hold spaces and maintain spaces that are fully human. That's where I thought the work needed to be done, as much as I loved working with young people. So that kind of was the realization that I wanted to make a change. A life event that caused the change was I was assistant principal, and I was sitting in my office, and I kind of looked up out the window, and I saw this little, on Wednesday, I saw a little like thing in the sky, and I was like, what's that thing in the sky? And I said, oh, whatever. And then Friday, the thing was bigger. And I thought, oh, that thing, that's actually in my eyeball. So cut to Saturday morning, and I'm in surgery for a retinal detachment. And the year following that surgery, despite having healed my retina, the doctors, I lost my vision in that eye. So.
And was there like, did anything cause that, or it just happened?
I was always I was told at 11 years old I was a high risk for that. So I always knew it could happen. My doctor kind of said it best. Just people who have eye issues, like she's like, imagine the eyeball as having, like, on the inside of it having wallpaper, and everyone gets the same amount of wallpaper, but your eye is shaped like this, and so it like stretches the wallpaper. And so for people who are myopic, they have like longer oblong shaped eyeballs, so they're like extreme nearsighted. You're at risk. And my eyeballs are like real long. Doctors are almost like offensive, like, oh God,
Oh, no.
I'm like, okay, we get it, it's fine.
Right.
I understand. It's been 37 years, but this was on like I think I was 28 when this happened.
Wow.
As assistant principal, and I just really decided that I could not spend the remainder of my time, along with my realization about the work I wanted to do in the world. I couldn't spend my time in an office.
Mm-hmm. You
and,
actually,
yeah.
I'm gonna share this with you because sometimes when you write, you get to like really express your thoughts the way you best feel like it. And Cardozie already wrote his story; it's on the website already, the FreeFall project. But you wrote, ironically, losing my vision gave me greater insight into what I wanted my life to look and feel like. So I'm sure that's where you're heading now in this story. But I just wanted to capture that because I think that's so powerful that like losing your sight helped you to gain sight in a way.
For sure, because I think I think there's a movie, what's it like, the Day of the World Stood Still or something, like it's like a remake. Like I saw the Keanu Reeves version, and like spoiler alert, like the world's about to end, and then it stops ending, and he's like, only on the precipice of like disaster will mankind change. And so for me, on like the micro level, I realized like on the precipice of a real life altering event, you begin to see things more clearly. Things that you inherit as just have to happen. I remember I told my mom, I was like, I'm going to quit my job and like do freelance or whatever. She's like, stop being lazy, right? Because in her mind, and like we've since reconciled that. And she's very proud of me now. But in her mind, in her inheritance, not working in 9 to 5 equals lazy, right? And that's a very specific and I think generational often kind of view of the world. And so she had to like watch me debunk that.
Right.
But all to say, I left the school and realized the things I wanted to do, which was I wanted to have a life that was not bound by 4 walls. I wanted to have the space and time to create art more, particularly art that I already started working on. And so, should I keep going?
Yeah.
All right. So that took me and my best friend Joe to Paris. Joe and I had begun writing in 2008, which is about 3 years prior to this, a musical called Madame Infamy about Sally Hemings and Marie Antoinette, as two kind of parallel characters. And so much of that show that we had written took place in Paris. And he had already been to Paris. I'd never been to Paris. So we were like, an Airbnb had just started. I just got my own apartment. I quit my job. So I'm like, I don't know how I'm paying for this apartment. So I literally like Airbnb my apartment for like 6 months, saved up money, bought a one-way ticket to Paris. I was like, I'm going to get back somehow. We spent about a month there. And we wrote the bulk of our musical, which I think 2 years later was in the New York Musical Theater Festival.
Amazing.
So that, so that was one phase of all the things.
Tell me, I know you went to Paris partially because of the musical, but what else did going to Paris do for you in this transition in your life? Yeah.
I think it just reaffirmed this notion of freedom. Actually, like one of the songs in that Memphis is called Freedom. And like I wrote it in Paris. And so it reaffirmed for me that, what does it look, feel, and sound like to be free, right? So in that moment, for me, it looked like sitting at a cafe or by the water, right? Poor as shit, mind you, like no money. Like I was like on Airbnb money, right?
Right.
Not poor, but like I didn't have any money, right? So, but still, I'm like, I'll take it. Like, if this is the price to pay for just space to dream about the future, as opposed to like space to dream about like tomorrow, right? And like life is so tomorrow. Like that's as far as we often can get, and quite frankly, as far as we're often socialized to even think. So for me, I wanted to really kind of like be able to dream up my life, and still knowing that every day could be my last day of eyesight, right?
Wow.
I wasn't even like life's short. Like, yeah, life's short, but like people don't realize like our senses are short too. And that's what I learned from losing my eyesight in my eye. Like our senses are short. And I don't have the luxury to like waste one eye on nonsense.
Yeah. Nonsense. I want to read this other part because it goes here. Where is it? When I finally gave myself the room I needed to breathe and figure things out. And this was when you started to figure out exactly what you wanted to do in terms of like building your business. But I just wanted to sit on that for a second because I don't think we do that all the time. Like to really just take time and space to figure out, what am I good at? What are my experiences? Like, what do I want to create and put out into the world? Like, we don't always do that. It's sometimes just this trajectory of like, well, I studied this, and I studied this because my parents told me to, or because my friends did it, and this is get shot out of this tunnel out of college, and then this is what my life is supposed to be like. So, I just want you, if there's anything else that you want to expand on that about like the importance of creating time and space to think about what you want to do with your life.
Yeah, I think what I've learned since then, in terms of the kind of life I don't want, it's a life of transaction, right? I give, you give, I get, you get. That's our relationship. My relationship with family, with partners, with the work, with arts, with whatever. America is we're so transactional. Like you can't give anything without wanting to get something in return. And so for me, the notion of creation isn't tied to that. And so what I learned in that time, and what I'm continuing to learn, is that the more I create, the more kind of just like stars are shooting out of me, and I'm not expecting anything in return, right? Things are coming to me. Yeah. Things are coming back to me because that's the nature of the universe, right? But I've disavowed myself of the notion that I'm somehow owed something, or that hard work equals like all of that. Like I'm just going to create. I'm going to create that is in a way that's driven by my passion, and not by the need to. I think one of the biggest pieces of wisdom my mom always gave me was like, don't chase the money. It's like, don't chase the money. Like, don't chase it. Because she knows, and I think many of us know, like that is like real suffering can lead, and that on that path, and you're chasing that. And that's the reason why you're doing a thing. And so I didn't want that to be the case anymore. And flash forward to today, I'm doing what I love and I'm making money.
So tell us, what are you doing today? How'd you get there?
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, well, about 5 years ago, I began full-time consulting. So I think maybe 2016 maybe was like my last W-2 that I filled out.
Yeah.
Right. No, I was like, no hashtag, no more W-2. Millennials. A little older than millennial, but it's fine. So yeah, I began full-time consulting, and really what I would call is facilitating conversations, and it began with schools, teachers, faculties, around those things I was talking about before, right? How do we better support and create environments where students can show up and be whole, environments where we understand the consequences of institutional oppression and institutional racism, and then create spaces that counter those systems and counter those narratives and counter those inheritances, and not blame the young people and approach them in a way that they have to be fixed. And so that was kind of the work I was doing with schools, and that led into larger work with organizations. And it really is the same. What I've learned is like the conversation doesn't change from school to organization to foundation to company to Fortune 500 company. The conversation is literally the same. So when people ask me like, have you had experience working and talking to corporate? I'm like, yeah, sure, it's the same nonsense. Like they're dealing with the same shit that everyone else is. In terms of my own business, so the first few years of that, I was working as an affiliate consultant for other organizations. So the Center for Racial Justice and Education, New York University's Center for Research on Equity and the Transformation of Schools. These organizations that were committed to racial justice specifically, and had a consultant model. So a lot of people ask me, what's the best way to get into the work, to start the work? I'm like, well, find another organization that has a model that is built around you.
Mm-hmm.
As much work as you can take on, they will give you, right? As opposed to the constant hustle of having to find work as a free range person often does,
Right.
or but then I was like, how much money they making? Like,
I remember having this conversation with you.
And I'm not saying they were like raking it in. No, they're not. But I think it occurred to me, I was in Detroit at like we were closing up a session with one of my clients who was a school, one of NYU's clients. And we were calendaring the dates for my next visit. And we were like, all right, so maybe October 31st. Cool. And they wrote in the calendar NYU visits. I was like, the NYU's not really doing nothing. Like, they're not doing it. Like, it was so weird. And I have like a really beautiful relationship with the school and the principal and the teachers. And so it was so weird to watch them put NYU. They're like, yeah, we just always put NYU when you come. I was like, all right, I'm going to work on that. Like, not with this school. I'm not going to like poach clients, but like in my life, it's going to be like Cardozie's coming. And so that was the beginning of me realizing that at this point I had created enough of a client base. One of the smartest things I did was, because all this talk about like know your value, right? This goes back to transactionalism.
Right.
Know your value. Don't do work for free. Don't give up your time for free. Cool, but money isn't the only way that we get compensated. So one of the smartest things I ever did as a consultant was volunteer my time on like award selection committees, and volunteer my time to like be on a panel. And in those spaces, there are just like dozens at once of organizations in one space, right? So they're all watching me be an expert, right? Which is nonsense language, but that's what they're seeing.
Right.
And that, like in 1 hour conversation, my pool of potential clients gets widened. Wow. And that's exactly what happened, right? So I started to get calls out the wazoo. So I left all of the other people I was affiliated with and just became myself, right? And then myself turned into True North EDI, Equity, Diversity, and Interdependence. And that turned into what is now a consulting firm.
Yeah.
So I have about six affiliates, consultants who facilitate on my behalf, on behalf of the company, people who are just like rock stars. And who I'm like, if I can, and it's interdependence, right? If I can make this easier for you, like if you don't want to do the hustle, because I didn't want to do the hustle at some point, right? If this can work for both of us, there certainly is like the work is to be had, and I have the benefit of having a wide network, right? So for as long as those people benefit from being part of True North, then they'll be there, and when they're not, and they're like, no, I can go on do my own thing. They can go on. Then they often do it at the same time. Right. So like this is part of the process. I don't foresee any lifers because I'm not a lifer in anything. I'm not gonna do this for the rest of my life either. Like I got like maybe like 5 more years before I'm like doing the next thing. I don't know.
Right. There's so many things. I want to rewind for a second, and I'm gonna come back to where you
are.
I'm
gonna grab my vodka gimlet that my husband made me.
What'd you say?
I'm gonna grab my vodka gimlet that my husband gave me.
Oh.
So here it is.
Sorry. I love it. Okay, one thing I just want to go back to for a quick second is we jumped from like you were teaching in a high school. You had this life-changing experience with your eyesight, and then had time in Paris to kind of follow like the musical theater path and create your show, etc. But when you came back and we talked about having that space to think, I think this is where people get stuck in terms of how did you figure out, like, how did you become an expert, quote unquote, in this field? And I think you've talked about this before, but I just want you to share how you came to package this to be your product when you became a consultant, and then when you put into your own business. Yeah.
So step one, and probably the most important step, was you just wake up one day and you start calling yourself a consultant. Right? It's just like, yes. I'm a consultant now. I'm a consultant, right? The minute you name yourself as a consultant, and like that's the title you use for yourself, and there are many titles in that same category of, right? you stop having interviews. You just have meetings now, right? And that was like, I was like, it's crazy to me, especially in my consulting, when I consult clients around like interview practices, right? And what does it mean to have interdependent interview practices and holistic interview, like where I'm not interviewing you, like we are having a conversation about like our values, where they're aligned, how we both might thrive in a partnership, right? But yeah, immediately there were no more interviews, and like who doesn't like? I hate interviews. I hate them. Even today when people try it, like. So when was I'm like
yeah.
Like yeah. I kind of like cut it down real fast. And it's funny because even on behalf of the facilitators who work for True North EDI, clients will say, we want to work with True North, but we want to like meet the facilitator before we start. I'm like, no, you're not going to. You're not gonna. So like,
right.
And I say that to say we really value their time. Right, I'm not going to schedule an interview I'm not going to schedule a meeting for them before you've ever come on as a client, right? Essentially, you want to see if you're the right fit. You are, are you the right fit, right? And that's super loaded. Most of my facilitators are people of color, right? And so we're not going to help you reinforce the same stuff. We're trying to help you undo
that you're trying to unpack. Yep.
Exactly. So I think that's the first, big thing is like I just named myself as a consultant, like literally it was overnight.
And I want to just make this crystal clear for everyone. You named yourself as a consultant, but people can name themselves as an author,
yep,
or a dancer, or a chef, or whatever it is. Like we get to do that. Like I think for so long, and I know I'm speaking to myself, like I don't know what it is about society, but we just believe what society tells us we're supposed to believe about ourselves.
Exactly. I met with a guy last night who is an actor, a singer, and I just met him, and I said I knew he was an actor, and I knew he was in the military for like 7 years, so he'd like went from doing theater to pausing to be in the military to like kind of like discover himself, and now he's out and he's about to start Columbia for acting school, but it got deferred because of COVID for a year. But I said, "Are you a singer?" He's like, "Well, yeah. Well, no, I guess I haven't practiced in a long time, so I guess I'm not a singer." I'm like,
the Cardozie look.
Like, who told you that? Like, whose voice just came out of your mouth? Like, who's like, what cop in your head just told you to say you're not a singer because you haven't practiced recently? That is some like institutional nonsense, right? Like, and it sucks because as much as I love the arts, it still inherits like its pretentiousness. Right, and then we like reproduce that pretentiousness and say, "Oh, I guess I can't call myself." Like, you can call yourself whatever you want. And quite frankly, the most crazy people are the ones who are like just naming themselves whatever, aka some of our politicians.
Yep.
And they get away with it because they just like call themselves that language, right? And they convince people that they are. And it isn't just about convincing or manipulating, right? Obviously, it's about like we get to be the narrator, and the author and the protagonist of our lives.
Yes.
No one else is. So why are we like? Whose rule book are we playing from?
Exactly. Oh my gosh. See, this is why I call it my muse. Yes. So I think that in itself could be it. But is there anything else you would add in terms of you named it that you were going to be a consultant? Is there anything else, or is that?
Yeah, it was a slow phase out, right? So I had to while I was phasing out this part of my life that I knew wasn't sustainable. I like slowly, like I said, like 2016 was my last W-2, but that W-2 was so small. It was like just a little bit of income. 2015, I had another job, a little bit bigger. 2014, a little bit bigger, right? So I started like kind of cutting down my obligations to, organizations and such to make room for my own stuff. But it wasn't, I didn't just like quit my job and like hope for the best. I had built up something in advance. And to be totally transparent, I had a partner who had health insurance, right? So that was very much an important thing. I have, as we know, I have serious health issues I have to keep an eye on. No pun intended. And so, that was important for me. But the reality is if you're asked, if someone's asking me, would you have not done it? I would be like, no. I would just find money for health insurance. I don't know how, but I would have to, you have to build in, like, we all have parameters. Like, we all have circumstances we have to deal with. The question is, can we be creative within them, right? As opposed to, I think, them turning into chains. Because health insurance is a thing. Like, we don't live in freaking Canada. Like we have to pay for health insurance, and so that's something we have to build in to our expenses. And unfortunately, it's, you know, it is what it is.
Right. Amanda is one. She's saying she's been dropping her or yelling into the phone yes so many times throughout this, and then she also said, "See, health insurance." Go back to week 1, which she also spoke about becoming a free range human and how she took care of her health insurance. But you're right. Like, it's sometimes we see these things as like it becomes the brick wall in front of us, as opposed to it being something a little bit more malleable that we just have to figure out.
A bridge, right? Like, this is the bridge. I have to figure out how to cross this bridge. But it is a bridge. I told Dewey, my husband, that in our wedding vows. I was like, I promise to always be a bridge and never a wall to you in your dreams, right? Like, they're both a structure. They're both something there, but like the way we engage them is different.
I love that. So I guess just in talking about dreams, tell me what, and even you said, you know, maybe you'll do this for 5 minutes, who knows? Like, what else is kind of bringing you joy right now? What else do you see on the horizon for yourself?
Well, I will say that all this dreaming and creating has created quite a workload. So, you know, it's funny. I came across a Facebook post that I guess I had created 2 years ago, like hashtagging free range humanness. We probably talked the day before that. And I said something along the lines of, you know, free range human doesn't mean less work. It means working on your own terms, right? So, you know, much to my mother's, you know, like contrary to what my mother said, I'm working harder than I've ever worked my entire life.
Yeah.
That said, I'm committed to retiring at 50. I'm committed to my company going on after I retire and still being a stakeholder in that company. So that becomes my retirement.
Yeah.
Right. Honestly, that was part of my decision to create a larger company, because I realized that it's really hard to save for retirement as a freelance person, right? So like, I do it, but I don't do as much as like I would if I had someone like matching my income.
Right.
So instead, I'm like, I'm going to create something that lasts, right? Or try. That's my dream. I'm going to create something that lasts. Again, but it's still like create. I'm going to create something that lasts, that I hope lasts. And then I think I do a lot of this right now. So the last 3 years, up until the last maybe till January, I was like facilitating and training nonstop. Now I'm like facilitating half the time, and like half the time is like the business, like making the business work. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I think I'd rather transition into like focusing on the business, developing really, really amazing facilitators, changing even the meaning of the word facilitator and making it mean something that's greater and more powerful. Yeah. And then beyond that, you know, I'll be in my 40s, probably, or maybe not. Who knows? It'll be next year. But I definitely want to ultimately not work this hard past 50, and really we're talking like 45. I'm 37 now, so I'm giving myself like 8 more years of like, you're gonna maybe, but like really work really hard.
Right.
But I would love to create a world for myself where I call it chasing the spring. So having enough money to always be somewhere warm.
Chasing
and like just like traveling around the world, like where I'm like, oh, it's cold, bye.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Like going.
Exactly.
I'm like hopping from New York to New Orleans to Paris to you know.
I'm definitely stealing that. Chasing the spring, love it.
Yeah, and it can be metaphorical, chasing the spring, right? But like really, truly living on your own terms in a way that's sustainable. And you know, I had dreams of like helping my husband like buy a piano bar and letting him do the work, like right, and like
Coming up at the end of the night and just singing the final song or something.
Exactly. Yeah. I walked out of my, like, I walked down our, like, we have like our apartment on the top floor. I walked out of our room, like, have the last song, and then I go back upstairs. But like the possibilities are endless, and the beauty of all of this is I actually have no idea, and it's like really fun. I have no idea. All I know is I don't want to be like, you know, like poor. Like I don't want to like not have any money. Other than that,
yeah,
as long as I feel I'm comfortable, you know. So we'll see.
I think that's what I love, and that's what I actually most want to capture, and I hope people take away is that like you aren't this like business person that has it all figured out, and you studied this in college, and you know you inherited this from your family or something like that. Like it seems like, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you are really tuning into your intuition and your gut and your passions, and you are following that, and then but also being smart to create something that lasts so that you aren't constantly like working for the man, and you're turning your passions into something that can let you, like you said, live on your terms, which I love.
For sure. And I think that the only other thing I would add is that I didn't really speak to is there was a real like benchmark moment where I had to really name the things that were getting in my way, the things I was creating that was getting in my way. Right. So like the vision stuff opened up, like, you know, created a greater, I think, gave me a different vantage point for what was possible and what I was doing, like how I was living my life currently that I didn't want to be. But I had to really do work around like what fears, what inauthenticities am I navigating and operating through that are going to keep me from, right? And one of those is you can't be a consultant unless you like, you have to get an education. You have to like do it. You have to do a thing and read those books and do that stuff to be the thing. I'm like, none of that's true, but I had to actually like name that wasn't true before I could move to the next step.
Yeah. Are there, I mean, I don't put you on the spot, but are there any, because I think this is the stuff, like, are there any other fears that come up for you that you still have to, combat, or just other, things, roadblocks that get in the way for you?
Every day. I like literally keeps me up at night sometimes. So like fear of not looking good. Right. So now I have people who work for me essentially. And how do I make sure that I'm not reproducing the same kind of like paternalistic and oppressive environment that I'm trying to undo for other organizations, and have a business that operates as smoothly as possible in that, right? Like it's always a balance. And so, because I am a for-profit business. I'm not a nonprofit. I'm not a charity, right? Like, so like I want to make a profit. Otherwise I would just be a consultant, like just me and my body. Right. But I have a business manager. I have an executive assistant. I have a program associate, right? I have these facilitators, and like I'm doing all of that in part to feed the baby that I gave birth to, right? So, but like I'm constantly scared of being paternalistic and reproducing those inherited systems that, that I'm trying to help other people undo. Yeah. And not looking good, and so like update, my eyes are worse now. So like I only have one eye, and that eye is not doing the best. So in addition to, this is the stakes become higher than just like me retiring at 50. Is like I might be blind at 50. Wow. I don't know, right? So I want to really make sure. I actually don't remember my point. I remember where I was going, but that was like that is the update.
Those are fears that you're having,
the fear I'm having. So like I have to center that. I have to make that a priority. But I can't. But I don't want to bulldoze my values, right? In the process of that. So like that's the thing I'm always battling with. And I'm married, so like that's a whole other list of battles that
during a pandemic. Right. So many things, Cardozie, I'm so inspired, even though I already knew your whole story, but I'm, again, in awe of just you and how you approach life, and I'm reading all of the comments as we go, and others are inspired as well, so I'm so thankful for you spending time with us. I think maybe I'll just have you end on just one doesn't have to be like an actual quotey quote thing or whatever, but just like, what do you lean into? What guiding principle do you lean into every day as you try to navigate this life for yourself?
I will give you the principle I'm leaning on right now, in this moment. So a few weeks ago, I got in like an argument with my dad about like protests and, looting and all of these like pieces of language that are floating around. And I'm like, you don't understand. I'm like waving my arms, and my dad is like, Cardozie, I hear you. I hear you. Thank you. He's like, I hear you. I hear you. I'm like, no, but get mad. You should be mad. Like, it's like he's not getting mad at all. So I think even though my dad and I, obviously, my dad's 70 years old, right? I'm 37. We come from very different generations. He's born in like Oklahoma, like rural Oklahoma, and there's not much else other than rural Oklahoma. So like rural Oklahoma, and I've spent so much of my time, I think, resentful of a lot of what I would call like values, not values, but like ways of thinking that he has that are different from my own. And so the piece of wisdom here is in that conversation when he was just like holding space for like my emotions.
Wow.
I was like, you're good. You're good. Like, first of all, I see me and you, right? Or I see you and me, like in my work that I do. I'm like, you can imagine, like I work with like in the realm of racism. So like, I'm getting nonsense all the time. So I have to like just hold space for it so I can deal with it. But more importantly, there is a tendency of human beings to wish away certain aspects of their life that they can't control, or wish away certain aspects of their lineage that came before them, right? So for me, as much as I can get mad at my dad and have over the last 37 years, I can't I am not me without him having the exact journey and the exact life that he had. Yeah. I would not be here. And I like me. So I can't, if I unwish him or like wish parts of him away, I'm literally wishing parts of myself away.
Wow.
Right. And so I'm seeing this like, I'm loving this new realization that I'm standing on his shoulders, right? I get to stand on his shoulders, and I think that's broader than just our parents, right? That's just like the people who fought for us, the people who screamed for us, people who were called snowflakes in the 20s, who like fought for rights and now we take for granted. Like all of those people are parts of our story, and it doesn't serve us to wish the other generation was more this or more that. No. We are where we are because they were where they were, right? It's like, it's part of this, we're part of the same story. And so that's the thing I think I would want to share with people. It's just wisdom I'm leaning on right now.
I love it. Thank you so much, Cardozie. We'll end there because that's just powerful. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.